High above Earth, beyond human sight, a silent alien council watched a blue planet filled with noise, conflict, and fragile hope. For centuries, they had studied humanity from a distance, debating a single question: were humans worthy of joining the greater galactic community, or were they a danger that needed to be contained? Their technology was beyond anything humans could imagine, but even the Council understood that power alone could not measure a species' true value. They needed something deeper. They needed truth. Among them stood a young alien woman of great status and wealth, born into one of the most powerful families of her civilization. She had lived her entire life in comfort, surrounded by advanced machines and endless knowledge. Yet, she believed that her real judgment could not be made from a throne or a screen. She stepped forward and volunteered for a mission no one else wanted. She would go alone, stripped of her identity, her power, and her protection. She would test humanity from its lowest point. The Council warned her of the risks. Earth was unpredictable. Humans were emotional, divided, and often cruel. Still, she accepted the mission without hesitation. Her goal was simple but dangerous: disguise herself as a poor human beggar and observe how people treated her when they believed she had nothing to offer. No rewards, no fear, only choice. If humanity failed this test, Earth's future would change forever. The descent was silent. One moment she stood on a clean, shining alien platform, and the next she arrived in a dark alley of a human city. The air was heavy with smoke and rain. Sirens echoed in the distance. Using advanced bioadaptive technology, her form changed completely. Her glowing skin faded into pale human flesh. Her eyes lost their alien shine. Her fine clothing turned into torn, dirty fabric. Within seconds, the rich alien girl became a weak, tired human beggar. She felt something new as soon as the transformation was complete. Cold, hunger, pain. These sensations were carefully limited, yet strong enough to feel real. For the first time in her life, she understood discomfort without protection. She leaned against a cracked wall, breathing slowly, observing everything. Humans passed by without noticing her arrival. To them, she was already invisible. She chose a crowded street near bright shops and tall buildings. Wealth and poverty existed side by side here, separated only by glass and ignorance. Sitting on the cold ground, she lowered her head and held out an empty hand, copying the behavior she had studied for years. The reactions came quickly. Some people glanced at her and looked away. Others frowned as if her presence annoyed them. A few whispered insults as they walked past. No one stopped. Minutes turned into hours. The sun began to fall. The city lights grew brighter, but the world around her felt darker. She recorded every sound, every expression, every choice. A rich man stepped over her hand without apology. A woman pulled her child closer, as if the beggar was something dangerous. A group of teenagers laughed and took pictures before running off. Each moment added weight to the decision she might soon have to make. As night settled in, rain began to fall. Water soaked through her thin clothes. Her body shivered. She raised her eyes and met the gaze of dozens of humans, but none of them saw her as a person. To them, she was part of the street, a problem to ignore. Somewhere far above, her people waited for data, for answers. By the end of the night, the rich alien girl felt something she had never experienced before: doubt. Not about the mission, but about humanity itself. If this was how humans treated the weakest among them, what kind of species were they really? She lowered her head again, hiding her face from the rain and the world. Unseen by everyone around her, the fate of Earth had already begun to move. Morning arrived slowly in the city, but for the disguised alien girl, time felt heavier than before. She remained seated on the cold sidewalk, her body weak, her clothes wet, and her face hidden under tangled hair. People began to move faster as the day started. Cars passed loudly, shops opened doors, and the world returned to its busy rhythm. Yet she remained where she was, unseen and unwanted. She lifted her head slightly and extended her hand again, hoping to observe something different, hoping that daylight might bring a softer side of humanity. Instead, the reactions became sharper. A man in a clean suit looked down at her with clear disgust and stepped away, as if she carried a disease. A woman holding a cup of coffee rolled her eyes and walked past without slowing down. A store owner shouted at her to move away from his entrance, saying she was bad for business. The alien girl listened carefully, absorbing every word, every tone, every choice. She did not respond. She only watched and learned. Her internal systems recorded everything, but something else was happening as well. Something emotional, something unfamiliar. The pain in her body was controlled, but the feeling of rejection was not. She had studied human behavior for years through screens and data, but none of that prepared her for being treated as nothing. She realized that humans did not need weapons to hurt others. Sometimes they only needed to look away. As the hours passed, hunger became harder to ignore. Her hand trembled slightly as she held it out. A few coins dropped near her feet, not from kindness, but from obligation. The people who gave them did not meet her eyes. They placed the coins quickly and left as if afraid of staying too long. To them, she was not a person. She was a task to complete and forget. Around noon, the street became crowded. Tourists, workers, students, all moving with purpose. Some laughed, some talked loudly. Some complained about small problems. The alien girl listened to their conversations and found the contrast painful. They worried about late meetings and broken phones, while she struggled just to be acknowledged. She wondered how a species capable of such comfort could be so blind to suffering right in front of them. Then the cruelty became direct. A group of young men stopped near her. One of them kicked the coins away, laughing. Another told her to get a job. Another mocked her voice when she softly asked for water. They walked away, still laughing, leaving her surrounded by staring eyes that did nothing. She felt a surge of anger, then confusion. Why would a species harm someone who offered no threat, who asked for nothing but help? Her confidence in the mission began to shake. She sent another silent update to her people, not with numbers or charts, but with a simple observation: humans show empathy only when it costs them nothing. The message carried no emotion, but her mind was filled with it. If this behavior represented humanity, then the council decision would be clear. As afternoon turned to evening, the weather changed again. Clouds gathered and the air grew cold. She had the ability to end the mission at any moment. She could return home and report failure. She could protect herself from more suffering. But she stayed. She needed certainty. She needed to know if this cruelty was universal, or if something else still existed beneath it. When darkness returned, the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows. The city felt less safe. Voices grew louder, but help grew quieter. A drunk man shouted at her. Another passerby pushed her aside without apology. She fell onto the pavement, her body hitting the ground hard. For a moment, she stayed there, stunned, watching feet move around her. No one stopped. No one reached out. Lying there, she finally understood something important. Humanity's greatest weakness was not violence or ignorance. It was indifference. She slowly pushed herself up and returned to her place against the wall. Her strength was fading, not physically, but in belief. The test was close to ending, and humanity was close to failing. As the night deepened, she lowered her head again, believing she had already seen the truth, not knowing that somewhere nearby a different choice was about to be made. The night had fully claimed the city, and silence settled in the spaces. Between passing cars and distant sirens, the disguised alien girl sat curled near the wall, her arms wrapped around herself, not for warmth, but for comfort. Her body could endure the cold, yet her mind felt heavy with disappointment. She had come to Earth searching for truth, and what she found felt darker than anything her people had predicted. Humanity in its natural state seemed uncaring, divided, and unwilling to see suffering unless it demanded attention. She reviewed the mission parameters in her mind. The test was never about wealth, strength, or intelligence. It was about choice. A simple moment where a human could help without reward, yet hour after hour the result remained. The same people chose comfort over compassion and speed over kindness. The data was clear, and the conclusion felt unavoidable. Humanity had failed not because of cruelty alone, but because of how normal that cruelty felt to them, her internal system. Prepared a final report, the message formed quietly in her thoughts. Humans lack collective empathy. Recommendation: delay contact, reevaluate planetary risk. Sending this report would begin a chain of events that could change Earth's future forever. She hesitated, her fingers tightening in her thin sleeves. She had not expected to feel this way. The council had warned her about emotional influence, but this was different. This was grief, not for herself, but for an entire species. Rain began to fall again, light at first, then heavier, soaking the ground and washing dirt along the street. The cold air pressed closer, and she leaned her head back against the wall, staring up at the dark sky hidden above the clouds. Her people waited for her signal. She wondered if any human ever looked up with the same questions that now filled her mind. Did they ever think about who they might become instead of who they already were? A sudden sound broke her thoughts. Footsteps moved quickly toward her, and before she could react, something struck her shoulder. A cause. Sharp pain followed, and she collapsed sideways onto the wet pavement. A young thief had grabbed her small bag and disappeared into the darkness. She lay there, stunned not from the pain, but from the reaction around her. People saw what happened. Some looked, some slowed for a moment. Then they continued walking. No one chased the thief. No one asked if she was alive lying on the ground. She felt something break inside her. The last fragile thread of hope snapped. Humanity was not just failing the test. They were ignoring it completely. She slowly pushed herself upright, her hands shaking. Her vision blurred slightly, not from damage, but from emotion. This world was not ready, she thought. Not yet. She activated her emergency communicator hidden beneath her skin. It was the final step, a single thought away from transmitting the failure report. She paused again, listening to the rain, listening to the city breathing around her. So many lives moving forward while one life sat forgotten. She wondered if her people had ever faced such a moment in their own past, or if they had simply evolved beyond it. Time passed slowly. Each second stretched heavy with consequence. She felt small for the first time in her long existence. Not powerful, not wealthy, not important. Just another being sitting in the dark. She realized that this was the true test, not the one she was giving humanity, but the one humanity was giving her. Could she judge an entire species based on its worst moments? Her communicator remained silent, awaiting confirmation. She lowered her hand and let it rest at her side. The mission clock was almost complete. She whispered quietly to herself in a language no human could understand. Maybe there's nothing more to see. Maybe this is the answer. The rain softened and the street grew quieter. Most people had gone home, leaving only shadows and distant movement. She closed her eyes, ready to end the mission, ready to return and deliver the verdict. Her decision was nearly made. Then she heard it. Footsteps slower than before, hesitant, not rushing, not passing by. The sound stopped directly in front of her. She did not look up yet, afraid to hope, afraid to be disappointed again. A shadow fell across her wet hands, and a human voice spoke softly, asking, "Are you all right?" In that moment, the future of Earth held its breath. Alien girl did not answer at first. She kept her head lowered, listening to the rain drip from the edges of broken buildings. The voice had not sounded rushed or annoyed. It carried uncertainty and concerned, something she had not heard directed at her since the mission began. Slowly she lifted her eyes and looked at the man standing in front of her. He was not tall or powerful. His clothes were worn, and his shoes showed signs of long use. He looked tired, like someone who carried his own problems, yet chose to pause anyway. The man knelt beside her, careful not to touch her without permission. He asked again if she was hurt. His voice was calm, without fear or disgust. The alien girl searched his face for signs of mockery or hidden intent, but found none. Only worry. She nodded slightly and spoke in a weak voice, saying she was cold and her bag had been stolen. The words felt strange to say because no one before had listened long enough to hear them. Without hesitation, the man removed his jacket and placed it gently over her shoulders. The fabric was warm and dry, and the simple act sent a quiet shock through her system, not because of the temperature, but because of the choice. He had given up his own comfort without being asked. He offered her a bottle of water from his bag and waited patiently as she drank. He did not rush. He did not look around to see who was watching. He treated the moment as if it mattered. As she drank, she studied him carefully. This human carried no advanced technology, no symbols of wealth, no signs of authority, yet his actions carried. "Wait," he asked her name, and she gave a simple one. He shared his own without hesitation. He spoke to her like an equal, not like a problem to solve. The city noise continued around them, but the space between them felt strangely quiet when a group of people passed nearby laughing loudly. The man shifted slightly, positioning himself between her and the street. It was not dramatic, but it was protective. The alien girl noticed the movement immediately. She recorded it carefully. This was not kindness for attention. This was instinctive care. She felt a strange warmth rise in her chest, something unfamiliar and powerful. He asked if she had eaten today. When she shook her head, he sighed softly, not in anger, but in sadness. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small sandwich wrapped in paper. He hesitated for a brief moment, then handed it to her. She sensed that it was likely his only meal for the night. She took it slowly, understanding the cost behind the gesture. Every bite carried more meaning than the food itself. As she ate, the man told her he worked long hours and did not have much. He said life was hard for many people and that he wished it were different. He did not blame anyone. He did not speak with bitterness. He simply accepted responsibility for the moment in front of him. The alien girl listened, absorbing every word. This was a side of humanity her data had not prepared her for. When she asked why he stopped, he looked confused by the question. He shrugged and said, "Because you were there." The answer struck her harder than any cruelty she had faced. He did not mention reward. He did not expect gratitude. To him, helping was not a decision that required thought. It was simply the right thing to do. She noticed his hands were rough and scarred, signs of years of work. His eyes showed exhaustion, but also resilience. This human had suffered, yet he had not allowed suffering to turn into cruelty. The realization shifted something deep within her understanding. Humanity was not one thing. It was a collection of choices, and this man represented a different path. As the rain began to fade, the man asked if she had a safe place to sleep. When she hesitated, he offered to walk her to a nearby shelter, even though it was out of his way. He stood and held out his hand, not pulling, just offering. She stared at it for a moment, feeling the weight of what it represented. Then she placed her hand in his. As they began to walk, she sent a silent update to her people. The message was short and unclear. Humanity shows contradiction. Further observation required. Above the clouds, the alien council paused, waiting behind them. The city continued as it always had, unaware that one small act of kindness had shifted the balance of an entire world. The walk through the city was slow and careful. The human man matched his pace to hers, never rushing, never pulling her forward. The alien girl noticed this immediately. He adjusted without being asked, as if he understood her weakness without needing explanation. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement, and the city seemed calmer, now almost respectful. She stayed quiet, listening to his footsteps and the steady sound of her own thoughts, which were no longer filled with certainty. As they walked, she considered the next phase of her mission. The council had designed the test to allow one final measure, a moment where kindness would come at a real cost. Not a small inconvenience, but a sacrifice that revealed true character. This was the point. Where most species failed, this was where intention separated from action. She knew what had to be done, even though part of her hoped for a different outcome. She slowed her steps and told the man softly that she was afraid. The word was not entirely false. Fear now existed in her in ways she had never expected. He stopped immediately and turned toward her, asking what was wrong. She hesitated, then said she had no identification, no money, and no place to go. She added that the shelter might be full, and that she had been turned away before. She watched his reaction, closely prepared to record the moment when kindness ended. The man looked toward the distant shelter lights, then back at her. His face tightened, not with anger, but with concern. He rubbed his hands together, thinking quietly. She sensed the weight of his decision pressing on him. Whatever choice he made would affect his own safety, his comfort, and his future. After a long pause he spoke. He said the shelter was often overcrowded at night and that it would be dangerous to leave her alone. He admitted that he lived in a very small place and did not have much, but he said she could stay on his couch for the night. The alien girl felt a surge of disbelief. This was not part of the predicted outcomes. Inviting a stranger into one home was a risk most humans avoided. Yet here he was offering shelter without proof, without trust, without guarantee. She searched his expression for hesitation, but found only quiet resolve. He was not acting out of impulse. He had weighed the cost and chosen anyway. As they changed direction, she tested further as the mission required. She asked what he would do if she caused trouble, if she brought danger into his life. He stopped again, looking genuinely surprised by the question. Then he smiled faintly and said that sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting risk. He said he believed people deserved help before judgment. Those words settled deeply into her understanding. Apartment building was old and narrow. The stairs creaked as they climbed. He apologized for the mess and the small space as he unlocked the door. Inside the room was simple, clean, and warm. A single couch, a small table, and a window overlooking the street. He offered her dry clothes and turned his back to give her privacy. Another choice, another sacrifice of comfort and safety. As she sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, she observed everything: the lack of luxury, the quiet discipline of his life, the careful way he moved around her as if afraid to frighten her. This human had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Yet he continued to act with dignity. She realized that this was the true test, not public kindness, not words, but private choices made without witnesses. The council signal activated silently in her mind, awaiting final data. This was the moment. She could reveal herself. She could end the test. She could decide the fate of Earth based on what she had seen. She felt the weight of that power press down on her. For the first time she did not feel worthy of it. The man offered her a warm drink and sat at the far end of the room, giving her space. He asked nothing in return. He did not ask her story. He did not demand gratitude. He simply existed with quiet compassion. In that still moment, the alien girl understood something profound. Humanity was not saved by heroes or leaders. It was saved by ordinary individuals who chose kindness when no one was watching. She closed her eyes and prepared the final transmission. The verdict was no longer simple. Humanity was flawed, broken, and often cruel. But within it existed something rare, something worth protecting. Outside the apartment, the night passed quietly above. The Earth alien vessels adjusted their position, waiting for her word. And in a small room, one human choice stood against the judgment of the stars. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. The alien girl sat still on the couch, holding the warm cup in her hands. She watched the human man move around the small space, cleaning slowly as if unsure what to do next. His presence was calm, not demanding, not curious in a way that made her uncomfortable. He treated her like a guest, not a burden, and that made the moment harder than any test before she knew the time had come. The mission could not continue without truth. Every second she stayed hidden increased the risk to him and to herself. She placed the cup down and spoke his name gently. Her voice carried a different tone, now steady and clear. He turned, surprised by the change, and looked at her fully for the first time since they arrived. She told him there was something he needed to know. She warned him that what she was about to show him might frighten him, and that he was free to leave if he wished. He laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but stopped when he saw her eyes. They no longer looked tired or broken. They looked ancient and focused. The lights In the room flickered briefly, then steadied. She stood slowly and took a step back, giving him space. Then her body began to change. The illusion faded quietly. Her skin shifted to a soft, luminous tone, her posture straightened, and her presence filled the room with an energy that felt heavy and calm at the same time. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting knowledge far beyond Earth. The man stumbled back, his breath caught between fear and disbelief. His hands trembled as he tried to speak, but no words came. He pressed himself against the wall, staring at her, unsure whether to run or scream. She raised her hands, slowly showing she meant no harm, and spoke in a voice that carried both power and warmth. She told him she was not human, she explained. She came from a civilization far older than Earth, one that watched developing worlds and judged whether they were ready for contact. She told him the truth of the mission, that she had lived among humans as a beggar to see how they treated the weak. She did not hide the truth because he had earned it. He slid down to the chair, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. He asked quietly if the world was in danger. She did not answer right away. That silence was heavier than fear. Finally, she said yes and no, depending on the choices made by humans like him. She explained that most people had failed the test. They had ignored her, mocked her, or harmed her. But then she looked directly at him and said he had done something different. He had stopped. He had helped when it cost him comfort, safety, and trust. He had treated her like a person when no one else did. Tears formed in his eyes, not from pride, but from shock. He said he was just doing what anyone should. She shook her head gently and said that was exactly why his choice mattered. He did not see himself as special, yet his actions had reached beyond his world. A deep vibration passed through the air. The man looked toward the window as the sky outside began to glow. Faintly, shapes moved silently behind the clouds, massive and controlled. The alien fleet had arrived, responding to her signal. The final phase of judgment had begun. She told him that her people were waiting for her decision. They had already seen the data, the cruelty, the indifference, the failure. But they had also seen him. She said that one human could not erase the wrongs of many, but one choice could prove potential. He asked what would happen next. She said that if humanity was judged unworthy, Earth would be isolated, perhaps even erased to prevent future threat. If judged worthy, contact would begin slowly, peacefully, with guidance, not domination. The fate of billions balanced on values, not power. He stood slowly, finding his voice again, and said if her people were watching, then he hoped they understood that humans were imperfect, afraid, and often lost. But he said they could still choose better if given the chance. He said kindness was not weakness, it was effort. She listened, feeling something like pride rise within her. She turned toward the window and sent the final transmission. Her message carried no numbers, no charts, only truth. Humanity is flawed but capable. Their strength lies not in dominance but in compassion. Recommendation: preserve, observe, guide above. The city, the fleet adjusted position, not descending, not attacking, but waiting. The judgment had shifted, not because humanity was perfect, but because it was possible. She turned back to the man and thanked him, not as a ruler or judge, but as a witness to what humanity could be. He looked at her, still shaken, but standing tall. In that small room, an ordinary human had spoken for his entire world and been heard among the stars. Dawn arrived quietly, as if the world itself was unsure what it was waking up to. The city below continued its familiar rhythm, unaware that its future had been decided during the night. The alien girl stood near the window, watching the sky fade from deep blue to pale gold. Above the clouds, the massive alien fleet remained still, no longer hidden, yet not threatening. Their presence was calm, observant, waiting for the next step. The human man stood beside her, holding a cup of warm drink, his hands steady now. Though the night had changed everything for him, he did not ask questions that demanded answers. He simply watched and listened, accepting the moment for what it was. She sensed that this quiet strength was another rare human quality. The ability to stand before the unknown without aggression. The alien girl spoke softly, explaining that her people had accepted her recommendation. Earth would not be destroyed, isolated, or dominated. Instead, humanity would be given time to grow to learn and to choose better paths. The fleet would withdraw for now, leaving only watchers and messengers to guide when needed. The decision was not a reward, but an opportunity. Relief passed through the man's face, though he did not smile. He said the world would never know how close it came. She nodded and replied that most great turning points in history happened quietly, decided by simple choices, unnoticed by many. Humanity did not need to know this moment to be shaped by it. She turned from the window and looked at him directly. He asked if she would return home. She answered that her mission was complete, but her understanding of humanity was just beginning. She said she would report not only his actions, but what they represented. The potential for kindness, even when the world taught indifference. Outside, the fleet began to move not with sound or light, but with grace. The sky cleared slowly as the enormous shapes vanished beyond sight. To the city below, nothing unusual remained. Only another morning, another chance. The alien girl prepared to leave, activating the final stage of her departure. Her form shimmered slightly as the human illusion returned. Her skin dulled, her presence softened. She looked once more like a tired traveler, but her eyes still carried depth. She thanked the man again, not for saving the world, but for reminding her why it was worth saving. He asked her what would happen next. She said humanity's future would be written by humans themselves. Her people would watch and wait, stepping in only when invited, not as rulers, but as observers. She said the greatest tests were not given by aliens, but by everyday life. Before she left, she placed a small object in his hand. It was simple, smooth, and warm to the touch, a symbol not of power but of connection. She told him it would never bring wealth or fame, but it would always remind him that his choices mattered far beyond what he could see. She stepped toward the door and paused for a final moment. She told him that if humanity ever stood among the stars, it would not be because of its weapons or technology. It would be because of people like him who stopped when others walked away, who chose compassion when no one was watching. Door closed softly behind her, and she was gone. The man stood alone in the quiet room, holding the object, feeling the weight of the night settle into memory. He sat down and looked out at the city streets already filling with people, each one carrying unseen choices, each one capable of shaping the future without knowing it. Far beyond Earth, the Alien Council received the final report. It was not a list of failures or successes. It was a story of cruelty and indifference, but also of courage and kindness. The Council recorded it as a turning point, marking Earth as a world of potential, not perfection. As the sun rose higher, the city lights faded, and the world continued unaware. Yet something had changed, not in the sky, but in possibility. Humanity had been seen, judged, and given another chance, not because it was great, but because it could be. And somewhere among the countless human lives, one quiet choice had echoed across the stars, proving that even in a broken world, kindness could still save everything.